All right, Bailey. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate. I know your schedule is busy, especially running a startup at such a young age. It's amazing to see Call as the infrastructure for scheduling doing so well. I want to first start. Call started as an open source project and you've released to the public. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned about releasing open source project to the general public?
Yeah, so cow.com was something of a passion project to begin with. I mean, I've always built solutions to little problems that I find in life. Not all of them are exactly destined to be companies the size of what cow.com is now. But originally, this was just something, to play around with, do. Like, I had a job at the time. This was just like something that I did in my evenings and weekends. And from day one, we made it open source. So every bit of the journey of building it has been fully open source. We've had a great community around it as well. Even when this was just an idea stage, we had a whole community of people who really were supporting it, and it's nice for them to be able to see and directly be involved in the progress, literally from turning it from idea to the company that we're at nowadays.
Interesting. And what prompted you to release an open source project instead of, being all closed source?
I've always been a fan of open source. I think a lot of developers are. Um, there's something beautiful about the kinds of things that get built purely by communities, and I've enjoyed contributing to open source and really supporting that where possible. And I like to make some of my own stuff open source because I mean there's a multitude of reasons. Um, first of all, that it's available for everybody. It's democratized. There's basically nobody out there that like can't have access to cow.com. Um, and furthermore, it's as a developer, it's a great to be able to like go into other open source projects, and see what other people are doing, what kind of best practices they're using. So yeah.
Interesting. And I mean, you've been developing the company and also, a lot of the code open source. Have you learned any of like lessons that you would share to people if they want, to create an open source project? Have you learned how to deal with the community or even, standards around pull requests and things like that?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to make sure that you're not like compromising on your vision, your quality standards, and things like that. So one of the things which can be a bit of a risk factor in open source is that there's a lot of people who will be there in the open source community and be very, very demanding. They expect that just because it's open source that you're going to build the things that they want built, or you're going to definitely accept their pull requests, um, or things like that. And really, you want to make sure that you're still on target with what you want to build, especially if you're building this as an actual company, because people come to us with all of these insane feature requests all the time, and as much as we try to be accommodating of them, and we want to build the platform that supports every single use case. But the thing is some people are asking some really crazy things, um, and you want to make sure there that you're not going to deviate from your intended product roadmap. Um, so yeah, I think it's like don't be afraid, because there are some people who are like really mean in open source, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, your product is terrible because you won't build my feature," and things like that. There are really crazy people out there, or ones as well that like a big problem that you have in open source is people like demanding support as if it's like a paid product. Even when they're just using it as purely a free open source user. And you'll see this not just with something like cow.com, which is a commercial open source company,
Yeah.
but if you look at just general purely open source software, say like Blender, for instance, you'll get people there who are like, they run into their own issue. And open source is community support. If somebody else in the community can can help you out, then great. But if not, then like there's no guarantees or warranties with it. But there are some people that very much expect a level of support to be above and beyond, and will get pretty angry if you're not offering that. So I think it's just like stand your ground, do your thing, and just because it is open source and you're putting it out there to the world, don't let other people distract you from what you're trying to build. It should be something that's constructive, not a distraction.
Interesting. And what are the upside factors that you've realized after releasing open source that maybe you didn't see at the beginning releasing the project?
I think, especially as a commercial open source company, it just gives us so much more reach into some of the higher regulated industries and things like that. So, for instance, like healthcare, government, or anything where there are like really tight security controls. Because the thing is what separates us from our closed source competitors like Calendly or something like that is with Cal.com. We have to request permission to your calendar to be able to see what events are there, to then see what times you're free and what times are you busy. And that's pretty scary. Like calendars are very, very sensitive things. It really depends on what you use them for. But especially once you start thinking about things like VC or PE, like they have their deal flow going through this. And in like the PE space, you could have like changes in the markets based on what deals are going on. Like calendars are incredibly sensitive information, and any developer can tell you that there is really nothing that stops Calendly or any of the other closed source alternatives from like doing some sketchy stuff on the back end and doing stuff with your sensitive calendar information. Whereas with Cal.com, you have that confidence that you can literally read through the code that touches your calendar, and you can see all we do is we pull the free busy times and use that to do some calculations to see what slots are you available, and that's it. You know that there's nothing dodgy going on. And that is definitely one of the big things around the Cal.com brand is this privacy, transparency, and that enables us to cover so many more use cases that our competitors can't. And that's all because of open source. I think another thing as well, which is really nice, is Cal.com is one of the fastest growing, fastest developed products in terms of actual features and bugs fixed, and things like that are out there. And a lot of that is also because of open source. Throughout any stage of the journey, there have been significant portions of the code base which have had like features added or bugs fixed, and that's all been because of the open source community. And the thing is, like Calendly and the others, they've been around for like 12 or so years. They have like 500 people. They have absolutely tons of money. They should very much have the upper hand on us when it comes to development. But we were able to catch up to them in feature set and far, far exceed their feature sets in absolutely no time at all. And that's entirely in credit to the open source community that have helped us do that along the way.
That's awesome. I've seen some patterns like that with open source companies. One of my friends has a company called Rocket Chat, which is open source chatting, tooling, and Department of Defense and all these government agencies, and even like companies that are like really worried about security, they use their product. So that's very interesting. As part of being an open company, you also has a page in your website call.com/open where you have salaries of your employees, global salary bands, bookings, and even team morale. Are there any learnings on having that information open?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of an unconventional practice and something that's a little bit new. I don't think that there are many companies, with the degree of transparency that what we're doing, it has its positives, it has its negatives. Um, so I think one thing where it's a real positive is for investors, and whether that's like the existing investors, because like we're a Series A company, we've got plenty of people on the cap table. They want to be kept updated. They can see everything straight from there without us necessarily having to send updates or anything like that. It was very helpful when raising money. So whenever we're like having conversations with VC firms, we can just be like, oh hey, like go to cal.com/open. You can see all of our statistics, and you can see like user growth and things like that. And even when I talk to VCs today, um, that's something that everybody's like, wow, this is crazy. Like, otherwise, they're always asking you to, like send all the screenshots, or like if you have a data room, but those things take a lot of time to set up. Like we may as well make it public. And also, it's a big thing in about our approach to transparency and things like that. So not just about what it looks like to people externally, but to our own team. So, for instance, because all of the salaries are open, everybody on our team can know and feel confident that like nobody's getting paid more than they are. Um, especially when you start to explore pay gap issues, whether it's gender pay gaps, or is somebody good friends with one of the founders, so do they get paid more, or did somebody negotiate a better deal? Literally none of those things exist at cal.com, and everybody knows that because the salaries are open, and things like that. So I've actually had before, we sent somebody a job offer, and they tried to come back and like do a counter offer. Oh, can we make the salary this instead? And I said no, because we have salary bands, and you've got to be paid the same as everybody else, and showed them cal.com/open. And they were like, oh wow, like I actually feel so much better now. Like I feel really happy with that, because at least I know that everything is going to be fair, and that like we don't need to negotiate these things within the company, because that you're getting a fair, straight deal, and like we operate on that salary band system.
So you also track team morale, and you show in the call.com/open. How has team morale evolved over time, and how do you try to improve, or do you try to, take that data into account and over time improve or do changes?
Yeah, team morale has been something that's been fairly consistently high. I mean, there are certain dips and things like that, as there would be anyway. The way that we collect that data is we have a HR person on the team who has these check-in calls with everybody, just to see like, are you overworked, and things like that. Are there any like concerns? Is there anything that we can help unblock for you? And as part of that is like a morale survey, and then we kind of aggregate the data, and then use that to form a kind of like average picture of how are the team feeling in general, as well as a picture of for individuals. We can see if they're responding not so well to certain surveys, then we know how we can tackle certain things. So on an individual level, it has been very useful in flagging some, like there have been small issues and things like that. Obviously, like people have things going on in their lives. If you're under a lot of stress for things outside of work, and then you come into work and you're being absolutely swamped, like you're not going to be in your happiest, most productive phase. And the thing is like we can easily move tasks and be flexible with people. We're here to help all of our team members, and so rather than it just being a pure morale metric, it's a good way for us to gain insight into any particular like bumps that anybody may be going through. And I like to just deal with those things, one on one, work with everybody individually to see like how are they doing, what can we fix for you. But then as well as a team, to see if there's a slight slump, because like this stuff is incredibly exciting what we're building, and we can sit here and talk about, wow, yeah, we're doing this in revenue and we're going to be here, and everybody gets super pumped. But at the end of the day, despite how exciting your startup may be, once you keep doing the same thing and you just go to work every day for 4 or 5 6 months, and you're not kind of like realigned with where like all the hype is and things like that, then people inevitably fall into a slump. And that's why we can use that to help guide. So we do very, very infrequent like all hands and things like that. And like if we see that people are just doing the same thing day and day again, and they're not being motivated as much, then we can jump on a call and be like, oh hey, look, we've closed these new deals, we've done this, like we think that we're going to be at this revenue at the end of the year. We're going to be like, we're taking over the world. And sometimes I'll even just share stories with the team about just like, or we'll share stories about being recognized for working for cow.com. Like you wear a cow.com t-shirt or something like that, and you bump into people like, oh my god, yeah, I love cow.com. And, that gets people motivated. And it's nice that we have like a good feedback loop on that, because we always want to make sure that everybody is as aligned with the goal, with the potential, as founders are, because founders and leadership and things like that are constantly in the loop. They're the ones that are going out there to all those events. They're the ones that are engaged in all the Twitter hype and the launches and all that kind of stuff. But if you're average like engineer on the team, or like, say for instance, like customer support people, customer support people have the hardest job in any company ever, because nobody ever goes to customer support to be like, oh yeah, you're amazing. You're always coming with problems, you're always coming frustrated. And it's always really important that we share with everybody all of those highlights, all of those positives, because it's not fair that just the founders should see and be in the loop with that. We really want everybody to be as motivated and as hyped as possible.
You've mentioned that you sent the data directly to investors, and in the roster of investors, you have some really impressive names, including Naval. You have, Pump. You have a bunch of names that are well known in Silicon Valley, and you're based, I assume, around London, even though you're in New York right now. I don't know if you moved, but how was the experience raising money, being from London and based in London? Did that affect you, and how did you approach to get such great roster of investors?
Yeah. I actually moved to New York at the start of this year, but for the 3 years before, I was entirely in the UK. And to be clear as well, I wasn't even in central London. I was on a small town on like the edge of London, where like nobody's out there doing startups or anything like that. So I had absolutely like zero in-person benefit. I also never even visited the US or anywhere significant. So there was definitely like absolutely zero in-person benefit to anything. Yet I don't think it really hindered us. The thing is with launches and things like that, if you can build up enough hype, the investors will come to you. They're out there looking for all the cool new things that are being launched, and luckily enough, we played the right strategy to become the cool new thing for a day, a week, a month, whatever. We rallied a lot of people, had a big launch day, got everybody going crazy about this. We took over Product Hunt, Hacker News, Twitter was going crazy, things like that. And it was literally on that morning of the launch, I think about like 9 a.m. on the launch day, I got an email from the guy who turned out to then lead our seed round. And then obviously like one comes in, then the next comes in, and then more, and much like how rain starts, it's a few trickles and then a downpour. because as well, like the VC community is fairly tight knit. If people in VC are talking about you, then others are going to be, alerted, and that's where we ended up just having floods and floods of people. Um, and I think what's interesting is, number one, we have never reached out to an investor ever. They've all come to us. Um,
Wow.
which is interesting because I talk a lot with founder friends and like, oh, can you give me advice on like how to cold email a VC and like ask them for money? And I'm like, I don't know, we never did that. We were just like focused on the product and the launch first, and they came to us. Um, but then also, we just knew well how to get people really excited about this. We sold the vision on it, and so these guys were sold as well. What's really nice is we have a ton of people on our cap table, and pretty much every single one of them is as bullish on this as we are as founders. They are people that like absolutely live and breathe by the same vision that we have. They really think that cow.com is going to be absolutely huge. And that's very nice. That's very nice to work with investors that are really like 100% behind the vision and, like will absolutely go to bat for you.
I've seen the graphs in the website, and it's pretty impressive, the growth of the company. So also you have open, the notebook or a little bit more about how the operations work at call.com. But I've also seen that at some point whenever you're hiring someone, you have a 30-day contract to hire trial period. And I've seen other companies do something similar, Linear, and other companies do the same kind of deal where you administer a 30-day period with the company, and at the end of the day, at the end of this 30 days period, you make a decision. Is that how you work right now? What are the advantages, disadvantages, and how is that experience has been going with you?
Yeah, I think like we want to be building the best team possible, because like none of this is possible without an absolutely killer team. And the thing that we always try and do is just try and get entirely A players on such a small team. We use a lot of like sports team analogies for this. Like there are only so many people that you can have in a sports team, so they all need to be the best that's possible. We employ the exact same thing here. So, we try and keep headcount as small as possible. There is no need for us to be like the headcount of Calendly or something like that. Like why do you need 500 people to do this? Let's do it with like a tenth of the people. And so, something that does work really well is contractor hire. So we work with people as a contractor for a month or something like that, and then we make a decision, and that is very good for them. They get to see if it's a good culture fit. There have been like one or two people that just joined and they said, what, actually, this is like too high intensity for me. I'd rather like a corporate job where everything's like a lot more specced out and slower pace. They can have 5 meetings about changing the border radius of a button or something. Um, but so they get to see is a good fit for them. We get to see like how well do they integrate with the team, how well do they work, like with their managers and things like that. And honestly, I mean, I think that it's significantly improved the average quality of our hires. That way, we can weed out anybody that's not a good fit before they're even on board, before they've like gone ahead and quit their existing job even. It's just such a smooth experience for either party, and I would like 100% recommend it.
You have a global workforce. You have people working from India, from Europe, from the US. How has this global workforce determined the culture inside the company?
Yeah, it's really cool to have such a diverse and spread out team. I mean, of course, we want a diverse team because I think that influences the kind of decisions that go on and things like that. Everybody's got different perspectives, and things like that. So that's really lovely. As well, we have like coverage of pretty much all time zones and things like that. So there's always something going on around the clock, which is why as well we're like an async first company. E.g., we don't have many meetings and things like that. Everything's put into threads and done in an asynchronous way. That basically like this isn't something where there are a team of 50 people here in New York. You clock in at the office at 9 a.m. and you clock out at 5 p.m. and that's it. Cow.com is something where it's just constantly running. Um, and I really love the idea of that. And I mean, I think as well, it's interesting to think about like how has that directly contributed to our culture. Um, and I think it's more about just like the way that we work. I think like being async first is probably one of like the biggest things which just kind of changes the way that it feels working with cow.com as opposed to anything else. That way, we can be very flexible. If you need to go, if your kid is sick at elementary school and you need to go like pick them up or something like that, like that's chill. Nobody's like, hey, you need to put in a formal request to go to your dentist appointment or something like that, because there's always, everybody's just kind of working around the clock. um, it's a very very flexible working environment, and I think that that's something which contributes really nicely to our culture, to the working environment, to morale. I mean, because to be fair, like, why why would somebody come and work for cow.com as opposed to any other company? And I think one of the big reasons for that is the culture, and I think that being remote and async first, is a big part of that, because it gives people a really good work life balance. We have a great amount of vacation. We're very flexible during the day, like what hours do you want to work, things like that. Um, we've been like super accommodating for people. Like, I don't know, if your family's in town visiting and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to hang out with them in the morning and then like do work this evening, or like if you didn't want to book it off as vacation, or like we can just do all sorts of things like that. And I think that people really love that. We treat people like adults here. Like, you choose like what hours you're going to work, or just go to your dentist appointment, go do whatever. And like, we trust you to get that work done, which is why as well we have like such a high bar for performance. We know that everybody is performing really well, so we're going to give you the liberty to go and do whatever you'd like.
And how do you approach the teams within, the engineering organization, things like that? Do you have different teams based on time zones, or how does that work?
So because we're like entirely async first and all that, it was literally just like one big engineering team. Nobody split between time zones. Everybody's like individual contributors. They're just like working on their own things. Sometimes they're like asking each other questions. You'll put out a question in chat, like, anybody who's around, can you help me with this? It was very very simple, but eventually we decided to split the team up into product areas. We have people on the core product, people on like the enterprise product, people on the new platform product. And we'll probably, as we release more and more things, we'll have more sub teams like that, but they don't have to get separated because of time zones. And that's because of the way that we've built our style of working and our culture. um, and yeah, instead it's just broken down into product areas.
Call.com is a Series A company, and you've been in your entrepreneurial journey for some time. What, what were the hardest things you've done and lessons that you learned in your time uh, running the company?
Yeah, I think it was always pretty interesting, to come at this very fresh. I've never done anything at this scale before. Same thing with my co-founder. Um, there are always a lot of new experiences, but I think that's what us as founders thrive on. Um, I always remember in the very, very early days, as soon as we raised money, we're like, okay, like let's build a team. And so there was somebody who I had in mind I really wanted to interview. He's still here on the team, like one of our best engineers. And so I sent him. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's have an interview. Like, would love to get you on the team. So I sent him my cow.com link. He booked it, and I remember like I joined the call, and in like the 1 minute while I was waiting for him to join the call, I just realized to myself then I'm like, oh damn, I don't actually know how to like conduct a hiring interview. I I'd only had one job before, so I'd only ever been to one job interview as a candidate before. So I had like absolutely no idea what I was doing, like hiring my first person or something like that. And you just kind of wing it, you improvise. That's what we do as founders. Um, as well, like when it came to raising, once again, I'd never raised money before or anything like that, and obviously we had many conversations with all sorts of different people, and like while we were raising our seed round, we kind of developed a strategy that we thought would work really well. It's just about like the way that you're selling this, became very good at selling this to investors and getting investors absolutely going head over heels to invest. I get a lot of VCs that are practically like begging us to let them do like a Series B with them or something like that. And I think that is just like a strategy that we've built up over time. Um, and yeah, I mean, like a lot of these things, you get thrown into new situations. Something will come up and you need to fire your first person, and that's always a difficult conversation. Um, like the sales guy is off sick, so you need to become the sales guy. And I think that is definitely like the best thing about the job. Is that you get thrown into some pretty random situations. You learn how to deal with them, and it's quite nice because you get to see yourself go from I have no idea what I'm doing to becoming good at a lot of different random areas.
You've launched, the company from Europe, from London. Uh, did you have any pros and cons of starting the company there in London, or um, did you notice any difference talking to other founders?
Yeah, I know. I think it's an interesting argument because like I now live here in New York. I'm now visiting like San Francisco a lot more, and obviously, yeah, I see the energy here. It's crazy. Like I say, I come from a small town. Like nobody knows what like any startups are. Nobody's like even remotely in the scene. Nobody cares who you are. But yet, like you come here and you go to all these tech events and people are like, oh my God, cow.com, this is crazy. Yeah, I use cow.com. Or they're all building very exciting things. The kinds of people that you meet in these cities and things like that is insane. Like you can just go doing some random stuff and you'll like make a friend who is some super high up, or like they've done some crazy startup before or something like that. It's incredible. But also at the end of the day, I don't really think that made such an impact on whether cow.com would be successful or not. I mean, like, so I started this in the random small town that I used to live in like on the edge of London. My co-founder literally started this and still lives on a farm in the middle of nowhere in Germany. Um, Both of us are as remote and isolated as you could possibly be, but I do not think that hurt us one bit, and we never felt a need like, oh, we need to go fly to San Francisco or New York or something like that because that's going to help us. Um, like you can come here and you can go to tech mixer events, and like literally every week there's something every day of every week for tech people here. But at the end of the day, like, does any of it really make a difference as to whether you're going to be successful or not? Um, I you go to tech mixer events and you'll meet people that do these like random startups that are nothing really to do with you, and that's not really going to help you in a business sense. Like, I made some really cool friends from these, but like, does that impact cow.com? No. I have taken a number of meetings with VCs here. Do they like me anymore because I'm sitting there having coffee with them as opposed to joining a Zoom call with them? No, it makes no difference. Um, I think it's really just, if you need the energy, if you need the motivation. I know a lot of people, they love just being around energy. I know for me, like the thing I would do for that is I would drive into London and I would go to WeWork every day. And like WeWork, I got to work around a lot of people, and at WeWork, at 5, 6 p.m., unlike a regular office, nobody's going home. Like WeWork, people are cranking until like 10, 11 p.m. at night, because chances are they're working on their own startups or something like that. So, I think if you're really in search of energy, sure, come to these places. But if not, I don't think that fundamentally it makes a difference. If you know how to do your stuff remotely, you'll be fine. There's nobody really needs you to come and pay $3,500 a month in rent just to come and live in one of these cities, because it's not going to make your startup any better.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've seen this trend of global founders, and I mean, in the US more so, within the US, there's a lot of companies being formed everywhere from, Chicago to New York. New York's actually becoming a big center of startups if you look at, seed and Series A. So it's very interesting that you mentioned. I think it's just because of the energy, and like a lot of young people are in New York. It's such a
Yeah.
an interesting city with lots of services, so people like to be there. But you also, I mean, it's a remote company, as you mentioned. It's a global company. And do you see any advantages of building a company remote first compared to a company that has an office? Any disadvantages of that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting argument, and it's something that I talk about with a lot of founders all the time. And people have these very different ideas as to, like, I will go and talk to somebody who's like, I think that everybody should be working in person. We switch from remote to in person. It's the best thing in the world. You got others that say remote only. Um, Ultimately, I think, like with most things with a company, you should choose one path and just really stick with it. Like, who cares whether there's the pros or cons or whatever? Just choose one and go with it. And just and for us, that's remote, and we're always going to defend being remote. I think definite pro of remote is you tap into the global talent market. Like, you're not just searching within one city or anything like that. Like, we post a job and literally anybody in the world can apply. Because of platforms like Deal, Remote.com, and all these, like, global payroll things, you can literally hire anybody in any country. So, you're tapping into like a huge talent pool. Like, we can literally just post this like little "we're hiring" badge on our website, and like 300 people apply immediately, because like we're not restricting it to any location, which is amazing. We don't have to go out there and post on job boards or anything like that. Makes that very easy. Second of all, one of the things which we do is global salaries, aka you get paid the same no matter where you live. So, me paying all these expensive New York prices, I earn the exact same amount of money as my co-founder who lives in the middle of nowhere in Germany on a farm, where like everything is infinitely cheaper. So, and that applies for everybody in the team. And so, the good thing about being remote is that like, you can take your salary and go anywhere with it. We're not You also know as well that, like, I don't get paid extra just because I choose to live somewhere expensive, because otherwise you've got like people going to live in SF and getting paid multiple times the amount that the equivalent engineer that lives in India would earn. Whereas with us, you're earning the same no matter where. So that definitely attracts a lot of, like, our own employees do like a lot of nomad, like digital nomad stuff. Don't go. I think pretty much all of us have done it. Like, take your nice US salary and go live in somewhere cheap in Europe or something like that. And yeah, you become very rich at that point. Like, we got employees living in India, Mexico, or even like Canada, Germany, UK, all affording like very, very good qualities of life because they're earning a US salary in a cheaper country. That is one of the definite benefits of remote. And at the same time, as well as people being able to have like insanely good qualities of life, on the other hand, we also don't have to fork out ridiculous salaries for everyone. Um, like if we were paying Bay Area salaries, our burn would be like multiple times the amount it is now. But instead, we just pay reasonable salaries that are just like they're very good for like pretty much every other country. You know, like even in your UK, Germany, Canada, anywhere else in Europe, stuff like that. You know, like these are all great salaries, but it's still not like we're still not having to fork out Bay Area salaries. So it's a win-win. You know, like we're keeping a low burn, we're being lean, they're getting a great quality of life. Nobody loses.
Because call.com is open source, I've seen that you have bounties on top of your open source code. How is that working for you, and how is that experience having bounties on feature requests and bugs and things like that?
Yeah, bounties are, I think, a really wonderful system. We never really used them to begin with, um, but you know, it's something that we brought out in like the last year and a half or something. Um, Everybody loves open source, you know, and then people contribute to open source all the time for free. But then you put bounties behind it, and people are like insanely happy with that, you know. And I think this is another win-win thing. You know, like people were contributing loads to cow.com even before we did bounties, and you know they love it. Open source is not paid work. You know, it's not. It's never intended to be paid work. But when you put bounties, there's like a small incentive behind it. Um, you know, it's such an incredible motivator, attracts so many people to come and work on things. And at the same time as well, like bounties are not exactly expensive for us, you know. So, you know, like people are out there getting rewarded for their open source work, and we're like not forking out huge amounts of money and getting some like amazing features built. So, you know, once again, just another really great situation for everyone. And that's been something that's been hugely popular. We even ran a hackathon last year entirely based around the concept of bounties, where we basically just put together like 50K worth of bounties and just got like some incredible minds, you know, joining in person here in New York and remote, and just saying, you know, like, here we are, go tackle this. And people absolutely loved it. Um, Bounties are huge fun. We love it on our own project. We love it on other people's projects. I think it's definitely one of like the hugely growing trends in open source.
So you've mentioned, I think, that call.com is focusing on consumer SaaS as a way to break into the enterprise market. Can you talk a little bit more about the strategy and how you see it playing out?
So it wasn't always the original plan, you know, like we always looked at you know, cow.com's big differentiator being toward the enterprise space, and also platform, which is for, we call it Stripe for time almost, you know, like where it's developer toolkits to build scheduling into your own app. But what you've noticed is the past few years we've been focused on you know, building our consumer SaaS, and that's because we kind of do a bit of a bottom up approach. So cow.com is free for everyone. It's just really good free SaaS, much like Gmail or anything like that. And that is how we gain market share very quickly. You know, obviously, we're competing against Goliaths like Calendly. We need to take users away from them. We need to be, you know, capturing the new users instead of them, and that we very much do. You know, like we have a better product. It's free, like really free, and that way, you know, cow.com should hopefully eventually become a household name. You know, everybody who knows, like everybody knows Gmail and things like that, they should know cow.com for scheduling. That's very much the plan. Now, you know, people use cow.com for their own needs. So then they start to think about, what if I start using this at work? So, you know, if you're building a startup or something like that, you will then sign up for the cow.com Teams plan. You will just upgrade right from within the app. It upsells itself, no salespeople necessary. you've got your small startup team of 5 people that are running on it, and at that point you then start paying once you're working in teams, and that's how we just do good SaaS revenue. And then your startup grows, it's massive, you've now got departments within departments and things like that. Then you upgrade to the organizations plan, which is for much larger companies, and you get extra features and things like that from within that. And then once you get absolutely huge and you need all these SOC 2, ISO, HIPAA compliances, and you need the 24/7 365 support where you need like a direct line to a top tier engineer and things like that, you then upsell to the enterprise. Cow.com is that the entire tagline is scheduling infrastructure for absolutely everyone. And what that means is we go from your absolute day one of just signing up and using cow.com for yourself, and we will support you all the way through to when you're an absolutely massive company. And so that's why we built the consumer side first, and then we've basically worked our way up and built everything in sequential order.
Yeah, so let's dive in a little bit more into the sales process. Do you take the bottom-up approach of, as the people inside the company start adopting it, or do you have any kind of sales team that approaches enterprises, like in a SaaS, usual SaaS company? How do you approach the sales process inside the company?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it is just easy upsell, and that's where different areas of our sales fall into different, domains of, or there are different teams within our company. So, like the marketing and product teams are covering like upselling and things like that, making sure that the people are upgrading. But then we do also have a sales team, and they mostly handle inbound sales because obviously, like when you search out there, what scheduling solution does this? Obviously, we come up because we do a million more things than anybody else, and a lot of things are only possible on cow.com. So then they fill out a form and they contact our sales team, and we do a bunch of inbound sales. We don't really do that much outbound sales. I don't like cold emails and things like that. So we're not doing any aggressive outbound sales strategies or anything like that. Really just inbound sales and marketing.
How do you see the company 5 to 10 years out? What's the vision, for the company in the next 5 to 10 years?
Like I mentioned before, I think one of the big ultimate goals is cow.com to become a household name. Everybody needs scheduling to some degree. Whether you're finding time to meet up with friends, finding time to call your mom back home, or whether you're using it for work, everybody needs scheduling one way or another, and cow.com should absolutely be the platform for that. We have the features, it's free, and in the same way that like everybody uses Gmail for their email, Venmo to send money, for Facebook Marketplace to sell things. Like this should just be part of like everybody's core tool set. So we need cow.com to be very very essential to everybody. But then furthermore, there are so many businesses and things like that out there that just aren't using scheduling when they should be. It's very silly when like to schedule an appointment with my doctor, I have to like call their office, but you have to call them at 8 a.m. and they tell everybody to call at 8 a.m. And then like you call at 8 a.m. they're like, you're number 50 in the queue, and everybody's scrambling for appointments. Like, why can't I just go online and click the date and time I want and that's it? Like that would be so much easier, no? Or I'm still scheduling calls with so many VC firms, and they're like, okay, let me send you my availability, and then they send, I'm available Tuesday at 4 p.m. in San Francisco time, or I'm available at Wednesday 1 p.m. San Francisco time. And so I'm like, counting back the hours, and I'm like, okay, yeah, actually neither of those work. I'm only available this time, and there's this stupid back and forth. Once again, why are we doing that? Like, let's get businesses on cow.com. There's like everybody needs this. Let's get everybody using this. So yeah, that's another thing. And then third and final, with our platform product, with our like scheduling infrastructure, anytime somebody's building the next Airbnb, the next Turo, the next telehealth platform, the next hiring marketplace, nobody should ever have to build scheduling themselves. It's a huge pain. Like any developer will tell you, working with time zones and all that thing is the
It
most
is.
annoying thing in the world. So why is anybody out there building it? Much like Stripe, nobody wants to build payment processing for themselves. That's stupid. Just use Stripe. The answer in the future should be just use cow.com. This is a product that makes so much sense. So let's get everybody using it.
Just out of curiosity, how did you end up buying such a great domain name?
We were originally called Calenso, and then we realized, we may need a better brand name, and so we went and looked out there for anything that was available. Buying domain names is I always tell people getting cow.com was like multiple times harder than raising our seed or series A. It's a ton of negotiation. It will like drain your time. You'll be back and forth with these people all the time. They're also needlessly expensive. And also it's super unclear. Like there's not really a good set price that .coms cost as well. Like if you look at publicly available data, um, if you look at publicly available data from .com domains, some sell for 50K, some sell for like 40 million. Like that is how wide the range is. So yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate you being here and sharing a lot of learnings and advice. Where can people find you online?
Literally anywhere. I'm just Bailey Pumfleet on any social media platform or anything like that. So also just pop it into Google. My website will come up. That has links to everything as well.
Awesome. Thank you.